Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're really diving deep, putting on our investigative journalist hats, if you will, to examine a fascinating and honestly pretty unsettling psychological anomaly. For all the social psychologists and digital researchers tuning in, this phenomenon we're about to unpack, it is a literal masterclass in the mechanics of online echo chambers. We're looking at a massive community of people who have poured their life savings, their time, and really their core identities into a company that, structurally and financially speaking, absolutely no longer exists. So, to truly grasp the sheer depths of this thing, we need to get inside the mindset of the individuals involved. Take a look at this sentiment from a community member highlighted in our source material. Listen, this is not cautious optimism. This is a statement of absolute, uncompromising financial conviction. This investor, and thousands of others exactly like them, are 99.99% sure that a massive payout is just around the corner. They're literally waiting for millions of dollars to hit their bank accounts. All right, let's get a quick reality check here, because the objective financial truth sits in stark, completely jarring juxtaposition to that extreme conviction. $0. That is the exact current dollar value of Bed Bath & Beyond shares today. 0. Notice the profound friction between these two competing realities. In the real world, we have the undisputed corporate truth, right? Bed Bath & Beyond was a struggling retailer, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, their assets were chopped up and sold off, and the shares were completely extinguished. But, in the reality constructed by this online echo chamber, they believe the bankruptcy is just legal theater. In their minds, it's actually a highly strategic, covert maneuver designed to orchestrate a reverse merger, which will secretly give birth to a gigantic Amazon competitor named Teddy. So for this community, the literal financial death of the company is just the prologue to their massive wealth. Section 1. The Catalyst of Cognitive Dissonance. Now, you might be wondering, how does something like this even start? Well, the frenzy was originally sparked by a billionaire activist investor named Ryan Cohen, a guy who was already revered as kind of a hero in other meme stock communities. Back in March 2022, Cohen purchased a massive 9.8% stake in Bed Bath & Beyond. Naturally, the community rallied behind him, assuming he was, executing this grand turnaround plan. Fast forward to mid-August. He files paperwork confirming he still holds his stake. Retail investors pour in, driving the stock price up a crazy 400%. But then, literally just 2 days later, Cohen abruptly sells his entire position. He completely exited the play. And this sudden departure? It served as the ultimate stress test for this community's entire belief system. The estimated profit Cohen walked away with from that trade was roughly $60 million, entirely leaving the retail investors holding the bag as the stock price completely cratered. Now, logically, you'd assume this massive perceived betrayal would just shatter the community, right? But actually, no. Instead, it forced them to reconcile the event in a way that protected their worldview, which led to a radical, almost unbelievable shift in their behavior. And this brings us to a term you'll see tossed around constantly in these digital circles, DD, or due diligence. In traditional finance, we know this means objective research to figure out an asset's true worth. But inside this echo chamber, the methodology totally inverted. As the sources point out, DD became this collaborative, almost theological exercise aimed solely at confirming a predetermined bullish outcome. To cope with Cohen leaving, their research shifted entirely from financial analysis to intense conspiratorial pattern matching. It brilliantly and terrifyingly illustrates the sheer lengths to which cognitive dissonance can drive human behavior. When Cohen posted a smiley moon emoji on Twitter, they genuinely interpreted it as a covert financial signal that their stock was about to go to the moon. We are talking about grown adults literally analyzing a series of children's books authored by Cohen, squinting at the colors of a cartoon character's socks to decode master corporate strategies. Anytime the failing companies secured third-party financing, they imagined it was Cohen pulling the strings from the shadows. They even developed these wild theories tying various high-profile Orthodox Jewish investors to a secret impending merger. It was an outright stubborn refusal to accept the simple fact that Cohen made a profitable trade and just left. Section 2. Denying objective financial reality. So by April 2023, the inevitable finally happened. Bed Bath & Beyond filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. To any rational observer, the objective interpretation is crystal clear. The company has failed. But the echo chamber, they claimed this is all theater. To them, bankruptcy wasn't a failure at all. It was just a necessary mechanism to shed bad debt before their glorious reverse merger. Our source material notes this absolute inversion of logic, where a fatal corporate bankruptcy was literally celebrated as a massive bullish victory. The delusion didn't break under the weight of bad news, it just absorbed the bad news and synthesized it into the narrative. And then came the ultimate, irrefutable endpoint. On September 30, 2023, the final nail was driven into the coffin. All Bed Bath & Beyond shares were officially canceled, released, and extinguished. Poof! They literally ceased to exist and were completely removed from the trading accounts of all these retail investors. So how exactly did the community respond to their assets being entirely erased? Well, one member proudly stated, "The only reason you extinguish them is because you're getting new shares instead." I mean, wow. Even the total erasure of their holdings failed to break the delusion. Instead of despair, it somehow generated more excitement. It just goes to show the existence of this incredibly resilient psychological feedback loop, where absolutely no amount of empirical evidence can penetrate their shared belief system. Section 3. Ecosystem of the Echo Chamber. Our sources break down the architecture of this specific echo chamber into 3 distinct elements. First, you have the catalyst, Ryan Cohen. He's treated as this silent savior whose every single online movement is viewed as a divine, unquestionable sign. Second, you have the enablers. This was primarily a YouTube program called The PP Show, which provided a 3-hour daily broadcast for the community to just hang out, share their wild theories, and constantly validate each other's DD. And finally, you've got the exploiters, figures like this wealthy influencer Bill Pulte, who, according to the investigation, essentially weaponized this desperate community for his own clout and to push forward his personal corporate vendettas. The mechanics of this exploitation are fascinating, but also deeply, deeply concerning. It's basically a playbook. First, exploiters identify a vulnerable community that is desperately seeking any shred of validation. They start interacting with them online, heavily hinting that they possess some kind of insider information about the supposedly incoming merger. But of course, they never make any actionable legal commitments. Then, they monetize. The sources detail how these figures hosted live, in-person events, pushing their viewers to donate heavily and charging up to $500 just for a meet-and-greet ticket. Finally, they attempt to redirect all that desperate community buying power away from the dead stock and toward their own personal interests, like literally pushing them to buy shares in Pulte's grandfather's home building company. Section 4. The Psychological and Human Toll. You know, it's really easy to just brush this off as some harmless, quirky internet oddity, but the sociological impacts detailed in our sources are devastating. We are talking about total financial ruin. Everyday people losing their entire life savings and rotating maxed out credit cards just to buy more of a defunct stock. There's intense social isolation too, with members hiding these massive losses from their spouses, which leads directly to severe marital strain and divorce. And it gets more sinister. Critics of the stock have been doxxed, with community members going so far as to photograph their children's schools and threaten them at their workplaces. Perhaps the most extreme, heartbreaking example of this delusion was a community member who actually traveled to the apartment building of the company's former CFO, who tragically died by suicide, just to harass the building staff, aggressively claiming his death was somehow faked. This quote really just perfectly summarizes the trap these folks are in. The sunk cost fallacy has them completely locked down. They've sacrificed their finances, their closest relationships, and their reputations for this belief system. To admit they were wrong right now would mean facing complete and utter psychological and financial devastation. So, instead of accepting the loss, their minds protect them by forcing them to double down. Even now, they honestly feel they're on the verge of a life-changing victory. Which leaves us, as researchers, psychologists, and observers, with a deeply provocative ethical question. In an age of decentralized, algorithmically driven collective delusion, where the catalysts stay completely silent, the enablers monetize the frenzy, and bad faith actors actively exploit the most vulnerable. When an echo chamber morphs into a full-blown financial religion, who is ultimately responsible for the fallout? Is it the invisible algorithms, the silent billionaires, the YouTube enablers, or is it the individuals themselves? It's a heavy question, but one we're definitely going to have to grapple with as these digital communities continue to evolve and grow. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning and keep exploring. Catch you next time.